Hello, hello. Make sure everything's working. I haven't done a stream in a few days. Some Chelsea related ranting from Quaz. Right, as Jack says here, get the likes in early. Let's get the likes in early today. We've got 20 people already in the stream. Nice and good. Just checking a few things. So today's stream, haven't spoke to anybody. You need your own show. What for the amount of ranting that you need, Kaz? So today's stream, we haven't streamed since, we haven't even spoke since the Flamengo game. Unless you've seen my Twitter, of course, I've been putting things out on there. A few bits to talk about in terms of the tactical fit, what we did that day, what I think's happening, a few transfer links that could sort of link towards that. Obviously, the midfield situation with the team is another big one. So yeah, plenty to talk about, as Zach said here. Plenty to talk about. Let me know if you're in the chat. Can you get your threads on Blue Sky? I haven't been going on Blue Sky lately. I don't know. Do people still use that? I downloaded it when it became a thing. When I thought that maybe Twitter was transitioning over to there. But I don't even really use threads on Twitter. Like I just sort of I don't do like whole threads. I just sort of do lots of little posts. I think there's a lot of people that sort of do the threads, and like for me it's a lot of the same things. So like that's the reason I personally don't want to rehash things that have already sort of been said loads in other threads. So I just sort of look to provide value elsewhere. You don't want Kudus for the split striker role. That's interesting, Zach, because I quite like the idea of him for that role. The only reason I don't is the fact that he's a lefty. Kieran CFC Central have been posting some stuff recently on Blue Sky. Fair. Maybe I'll have a look at it again, but I haven't in a while. It's almost July pre-season. We have not made any signings and not improved the first team. I mean, Delap, but yeah, I agree. We do need to sort of speed things up. What else do we need to talk on? I have a lot of ranting. I made a post about all the Chelsea Academy players and how if we just kept them all, we'd have a base for an amazing team to build on at virtually zero transfer cost. Yes and no. Like the thing is, I think what a lot of people sort of miss out, and I think obviously the spending has been poor in a lot of areas. But I think what a lot of people miss with the spending is the fact that we spend so much. Oh, right, okay. You think you did very well. Yeah, I think that's I think completely fair if that's your point. And we're going to speak about that, Daniel. But the thing is, I think what a lot of people miss with the whole spending thing is that a lot of the reason to spend, we've got lots of little assets in the club. And I think the idea of buying a lot of these assets, and obviously we've got £1 billion spent, but so much of that is still there and it's still sort of regurgitating in the club. So the idea is now that no matter how much sort of goes in and out of the club, like, yes, we'll be selling players and buying players, and eventually people will say, oh, Chelsea have spent £2 billion because that's how much we've spent since the owners joined. But you think like players like Angelo, you think Edgar Chukwu, if he's sold, a lot of these players, like I could list so many, a lot of these players are there to be flipped and continue to flip, because then we can continue to spend 200-300 million every single window if we so please. And yes, again, you may disagree with how we're spending it, and I think in certain areas I do, in certain areas I don't, and that's up to you. But I think that is the idea. So I think when we talk about sort of the transfer cost and the whole point of like, oh, Chelsea have got a £1 billion squad, I think it's less to do with the fact that we have a £1 billion squad rather than a £1 billion sort of strategy, if that makes sense. That's not the sort of thing I really want to talk too much about, because I think that that's heavily covered. But that's just sort of my look on it. I do think that the idea that we sort of keep income going in and out of the club is a large reason as to why we spend so much on players that don't seem to they create a farm system. Exactly this. They have to make up the gap of having a stadium that's 20k seats less than their competitors. Fred, that's spot on. They've made a farming system is essentially what I'm trying to say. So yeah, you're correct. Waiting for you to break down the new system and the profile that best fit. Yeah, we're going to get onto it now. What I'm also going to do, just to let you know, is I'm going to use what I'm going to do is in this stream, I'm going to break it down now because make it like podcasty. We're going to go into the tactics. We're going to speak about it for like 10 minutes where I don't talk, where I don't sort of look at the chat. Then I'm going to turn that into a video on the channel, which you guys hopefully can support. Go leave your questions on. I'm going to add extra sort of like images and edits to it to go into a little bit more detail. That will be uploaded as a separate video later on today, as like a 10-12 minute tactical video. So hopefully you guys can support that as well. And then we can go back into this sort of like streamy podcasty where I'm answering all these questions. Some of the assets will depreciate when they clearly don't fit our needs and can't get game time though. Yes, and that's hopefully why you try to use Strasbourg and you try to broaden that horizon. So yeah, I get it. But I think that's also to do with the fact that I think that's also why you buy players that have less chance of depreciating. And again, that's part of the gamble. But we'll talk about that another time. Let's get into the tactics. So on paper, we sort of set up, you could call it a 4-3-3 like this. You could still call it a 4-2-3-1 like this if you wanted Enzo as the 10. Off the ball is pressing in more like this, more of a 4-1-4-1, which sort of, again, like as it got deeper, it would then become actually more of a 4-4-2 with Enzo sort of playing left mid, Neto and Delap sort of like this in a 4-4-2 as it got deeper. But to begin with, it was sort of a little bit more like a 4-1-4-1 that we're used to seeing with James and Enzo in those central positions to press centrally, Casado in the 6, and then obviously Neto and Palmer on the wings. So with those two on the wings, obviously a lot of the questions being answered in this video and in this sort of section. Palmer on the right, Reece in the middle, Neto's different / new role, and the build-up structure, not including an inverted fullback, so the back four. Let's go and quickly have a little look. Can you guys see that? Let me know. Can you guys see that? Because the whole point of this system and what I think they're trying to do, and what Maresca's, he's even said himself, he's trying to experiment a little bit for next season. Now, one thing I want to put out there, this is not something that I think we see every single game. This is not like a new system where I think we line up with it every single game. I think it's something that Maresca's trying to add a different dynamic to the team. So as you can see, you've got the 4. You've technically got the 4 in the middle here with Cucurella and Gusto, both pushed up even further than the double pivot. You've got the 3, the back 3, with the 2 split centre-backs and Sanchez in the middle. So you've got that to form the build-up. Again, you're outnumbering that front 2 if they push on to press you. Got the 2 in the pivot. Again, they can be man-marked. But again, if only one goes, then they've still got that 2v1 advantage in the middle. And then you're providing width. Rather than providing width high up the pitch, you're providing it a little bit deeper. And Gusto and Cucurella can provide the width deeper to be an option to pass out from the back, building in a back 4 rather than a back 3. But then they can also push forwards to provide the width going forwards. And that is why it got interesting as we pushed higher up the pitch. Because if we go into this image, you then see Enzo and Palmer, who's the right winger, who was fixing himself in field from the get-go. It wasn't sort of like what we saw a little bit more last season where he was pinned out on the right and he would drift. This is under Pochettino when I say last season, by the way, where he'd start on the actual right wing and he would come inside as Gusto overlapped. And there was a little bit of a dynamic there. What you can see here is Palmer, even in the first phase of build-up, he's in that pocket. He's already allocated himself within that pocket. Same with Enzo, who's playing in the 10s. That's normal. So you've still got those double sort of half-space pocket players. The difference is now is because these two are providing depth, width deeper, further up the pitch, you're not going to have the width. But this is where it's interesting. Because, of course, we know that these guys can push on and provide that width. But with these two players, what's so intriguing to me with Neto and Delap playing as these split forwards, which I think is something we're seeing a lot more now with Marmoush at Manchester City. And it's a way of sort of, again, you've got Rafinha is another one that does it. Adding this dynamic to your team, especially against teams that are going to press you man for man, gives you the chance to create these sort of artificial transitions. Now, in this scenario, it is actually a 2v3. But what you've got here with their fullback is if he was to press outward, if they're pressing aggressively and say they don't want Cucurella or Gusto to receive the ball, and they're pressing man for man in those areas with the fullbacks both jumped up, what you're going to get is a 2v2 with Delap and Neto or whoever the personnel is. Be more direct. So especially against those teams that are going to press you man for man, you've now got the opportunity to, instead of having to play out from the back, now you've got the opportunity to play out from the back because you've got the back 4, you've got the width that is deeper, you've got the double pivot still intact, you've got the 2 half space players. But if you go direct, you've got Delap who can spin into the channel. You've got Neto who can spit into the channel. You've got one who can come deeper to receive the ball and turn and try and play the other one through. And you create these little 2v2 artificial counterattacks. Like I say, this isn't a 2v2, but it's what it creates in sort of hypothetically. Now, what is brilliant about this is that, of course, it can also bring in somebody like Nicholas Jackson. You can have Nicholas Jackson and Liam Delap playing together. Now, the main thing for me is these two spaces behind it. And I think how we sort of suffered in this system, which is what we're going to get into now as to why it didn't really work as effectively as it could, is the tempo that we played at. We played so quick. And I think because it was almost, let's play this way, it felt like we did it at every given opportunity. Let's go long. Let's go long into those two players. Let's try and hit those channels and let's do that. But by doing it every single time and by not slowing the game down at all, the fullbacks were often out of position, which left these huge spaces behind them, which then meant one of Caicedo or Reece had to cover in those areas, and our rest defence was never set. So our counter press was really poor in this game. Ability to take control of the game was awful, and that was the knock-on effect of trying to play this system. And I think the fact that, like I say, would usually say when I think with this team, because it's so young, if you tell them something, I think a lot of them want to do it instantly. They want to keep doing it and they want to sort of impress straight away and they want to sort of enact that system straight away. Whereas I think it's something, that's why I sort of said this season, the details need to come a little bit slower. Like last season, I understood why there was less coaching details and why we was quite fixed, because I think that it was more about being simple and getting an understanding in the team. Now this season, I think we're going to experiment a bit more. Let's go back to the tactics board and let's speak about why those positions. Let's go to the on-ball shape that we was just talking about. So Neto infield. And this is the first phase of build-up. Now, when we got higher up the pitch, Neto would drift back over to the left and get on the ball a little bit more out there. But let's go back into this sort of area and how we sort of saw it here, because it was sort of like this. Now, let's say these two players push forward. Now, what I mean by the tempo, if we are keeping this ball and we're slowly building up, and these are a little bit deeper, and as we build slowly, let's say we hit these areas by the time these players are here, but because we've moved up as a unit, these players are now slightly higher. These players are now positioned here, so that if we lose the ball, there's now less space unless it goes really long in behind and they put a chase on. And that has to be a pin perfect ball because it's not easy to sort of make and weight that ball perfectly at that distance. You've now got players that are in closer proximity, like these gaps. Again, the centre-back ones are a little bit bigger, but you've got these two here. You've got these gaps here are smaller, as you can see. However, what we did way too much, like I say, when we was trying to sort of do this and try to implement this more direct system, is we would go through, either through into here or even just long into the channel way too quickly. We'd have Gusto bombing forward. We'd have Palmer bombing like forward or sort of in that zone. We'd have Delap trying to spin into that channel, and that would be the same on either side of the pitch. So then if their player was then to get the ball back, it was quite easy to find one pass through into these spaces that we just spoke about, here and here. Because let's say Kukurea, if it was on the other side, he's pushed up. And that's where you fall into the trap of now your rest defence isn't set. It's not higher. They're not high in there to sort of stop that quickly. They're instead a little bit further back. These two are a little bit further back. And it's going to mean that there's a knock-on effect through the team. James is going to have to come out to here if it's on the right side of the pitch, or Caicedo into here. And once James comes into here, Caicedo is now isolated in the middle of the pitch as well. He's got no help, which means if they get past James, you're now against three. And it just has the knock-on effect of where you can then start to find Chalobah jumping out of position, Caicedo having to run back and sort of defending these bigger zones here. Same with Colwill. Again, if he jumps out, Caicedo having to... And we saw it quite a few times. Both defenders jump out, and Caicedo is actually the one defending deepest to try and sort of mop things up. So the system itself can work, but there's obviously quite a few details, and I think the pacing of it is a massive one. to ensure that the counter press isn't ineffective. Now, that's not to say that you can't go direct straight from here into the channel on one or two occasions, but I think that we didn't switch it up enough, because I think that what we then did is we ran ourselves into the ground. We made it a bit of a back and forth game, which suited Flamengo more with those bigger spaces in the channels, and I think they managed to hurt us by doing so. Is there anything else that I was going to say before we sort of go on to the question part of the video? I'm not sure there was. Let's go into the questions now. Let me go back to the questions, back to the stream. Let me know any questions you have based on that system that we just spoke about. And also, can we please drop a like? We're 20 minutes into the video. We've got 42 people. I'm going to take a swig while some questions come in of this drink. 25 likes. We've got 42 in the stream. I'll refresh that in 2 minutes. Can we get that to 40 minimum? Because we've already got 40 people in the stream. So 40 likes minimum. Let's do it and get your questions in, and we'll start going through the questions about this system in general. What's up, Will? I'm doing good. How are you? A lot of people saying screams Ekitike, Delap and Ekitike out front. It would be very cool. Completely done with Jackson's interesting. I'm frustrated with him for sure. I've already said I would do the Ekitike. I would get rid of Jackson to bring in Ekitike. But I also do want, I would like to see Jackson and Delap. If you're not going to bring in Ekitike, then I would like to see this system used with Jackson to see how it does. But this does definitely scream Ekitike for sure, especially in those 2v2. I think Delap and Ekitike in those sort of 2v2 moments, if you can create those moments for them, is very, very fun. What happened to Gusto last season? He was so good under Poch. I've sort of said it a few times. A lot of people think it's the system. I think it's had an effect in terms of it was a change, and it halted his momentum. I think it's the system change. I think that's what the system change did. I still think he's switched on enough to know what he's doing. I think one thing that we need to speak about is that defending at the back post, that's always been an issue. Even last season when he has in his best, in the season where people rated him highly, he has always had that sort of issue. So that's not something that's new. So that's not something that I would necessarily judge this season on. I would sort of say that's a constant that we've seen on both seasons. The difference this season for me has been his quality on the ball in terms of crossing delivery and simple passes more than anything. And I think that just comes a lot down to his confidence for me. Do you not think Nkunku suits the system you're showing? Now, a lot of people have said this on my tweet, because he could obviously play in this Neto role where he comes in off the left and he's in here. My biggest issue with that is, one, when you end up pressing teams backwards, you are still going to end up where this player becomes the winger, and he doesn't really have the pace and athleticism that is needed, in my opinion, for that. The other thing is the work rate, and I think that the idea of these players is that they are to be relentless. They need to run in the channels every single time. They need to keep stretching play, and they need to be a hassle. And I think Nkunku, whilst it could work, I think it would have been better if we had him doing this from the start. I think now it's almost too late. I think the bridges are almost burnt. I think it would be really hard to get him to work how you'd at a level that you'd be happy with in terms of intensity. I just don't think it's going to happen. Going from 5 guys approach to rest defense to 4 seems like a recipe for hamstrings injuries. Yeah, that's another thing. I think this is only for certain games, and I think what it would mean is maybe Enzo isn't the best player to have in there for this system. Yes, he's brilliant receiving between the lines and playing forwards, which is good because, again, you can hit those channels. But I think what happens is when you have him bombing forward, I think these players also have a duty to cover those half spaces. And I think Enzo and Palmer, in terms of retreating, defending backwards, aren't as strong in that instance. If, for example, instead you had a midfield 3 of Casado, Lavia, and Santos, all of a sudden you have a little bit more work rate here to cover Cucurella, he's going to work his socks off to get back anyway. And then maybe have Reece here, and he works his way up a little bit slower than Cucurella, who's a little bit more intense, depending on the intensity of the game and the physicality of the game. So I think it's all to do with sort of the principles of how you do it. Because I do agree, obviously, having like that 4-man rest defense rather than the 5-man rest defense, there's more onus on these 4 players to slow play down, but there's also more onus on these players to bust a gut to get back. So I hear what you're saying, but I think in certain games it would work, and I think certain personnel would help it as well. And like I say, the tempo is a massive thing for it. Does this really suit Reece? Risk of injury and Josh as right back. I do think this is one of those ones where maybe it doesn't suit Reece. No, I agree. Because if you're going to put him in this role, it's not great for him. And then in midfield, I think I'd rather have other options. So maybe this is the sort of system where it doesn't necessarily suit Reece as much. But as I keep trying to say, this is a system that I don't think we'll see very often. I think this is something that we're trying to add to our... You're trying to almost make a tactical toolkit. And I think this is something you want to add so that against man-to-man presses, you can do it. And even against back 5s, you can do it. Because if they're pressing with sort of 3 along here and 2 in the middle, or 2 up front, 3 in the middle, then having these sort of wide players allows them to carry the ball forwards and have 2 players here to sort of pin that back 3. If you're playing against a back 3 or a back 5, like we say, it will open up spaces elsewhere. So I do think there's scenarios where we could use it. Do you think this is Maresca's plan to beat low blocks? No, I don't, because I think against low blocks, do I think it could... It depends what you mean by a low block. If they defend in a low block from the get-go, then no, because this wouldn't matter because they wouldn't press you man-to-man, so you wouldn't end up with a 2v2 here. If they're a team a little bit more like Brentford, who actually do press... Well, again, this might be different this season with Thomas Frank going to Spurs, but someone like Brentford, they actually do press man for man, but then they retreat into a back 5. In that case, then yes, because you'd be enticing them in, and then you'd be looking to hit the forward line and attack them before they can even get into a low block. And I agree with this, Zach, and that's why half of the fixing a low block and like planning to beat a low block is actually just around personnel, adding a Delap, adding a Gittins. These players will help that naturally because they're more the personnel and the attributes that we missed against those low blocks. So I think that's something to sort of keep an eye on with that. What else have I missed? Playing RJ as a midfielder was a bad decision. Yeah, I agree. That's the decision I didn't like. I would have started Andre Santos. Fair, Lavia played, don't start him. I would have started Santos in there, Enzo in there, and I'd have just ran the system exactly the same, exactly how you did it. Don't mind Gusto playing him in that overlapping role. Don't even mind playing Palmer on the right. I've said before I prefer him in the 10. I just do. But for this system, I would have ran it like this. But I definitely, the Reece decision is the one that has a lot of people most annoyed, and I hear it. I like this system because it will be better to utilise our midfield depth. It's definitely something that can allow the midfield 3, yeah. Da Vinci, sorry I missed that. Hi, Connor, sorry, just got to the stream. What do you think about the Santos situation? I think at the minute it's getting overblown, but I am one of those people that it's quietly in the back of my head because I am worried about I don't want him to be sold, and I would have started him in one of those 2 games personally, but I'm not worrying yet. But so I understand that people think it's being overthought at the minute. But yeah, when you're saying what players do you think we could sign that would suit this system? I don't think anyone will be signed specifically to fit the system. That's not to say that people being signed won't be sort of in the back of their minds, can they play multiple systems? So like say Ekitike, I think the idea would be that if we're going to play this system, you actually could play him off the left and become that double striker. But if you're going to play the normal system, which we'll see more often, this, like I say, this isn't going to be the normal system, then Ekitike can also play as that number 9. So I think what you want is with the signings we're going to make is, do they have tactical versatility? Kudus is another one. Now, again, like Zach said earlier, and it's my main drawing point with him, I'm not 100% sure I want another left footer, especially whilst we only have really one right footer, and that's if Gittins signs and George goes on loan. Like Gittins and George as a 2, even if it is 2 right footers, if they are the 2 right footers, for me, it's still not enough in terms of having the distribution between right and left footers. But Kudus is another one that he can play on the right. He can play on the left, especially if you're going to do this role. I think he actually suits it to give him those 2v2 counter-attacking moments. But he can also play in the 10. So he gives you versatility across the entire front line. He gives you athleticism, pacing behind, relentlessness, wins his duels, works hard off the ball. So he makes a lot of sense other than the fact he's left-footed, especially for tactical versatility. So that's what I make in terms of this system and how they'd suit it, but how they translate across multiple systems as well. So yeah, what other questions have we got? Let me refresh, because I said we'd refresh after a minute. What are we on? 32, but we've got 50 people in the building. Can we get that like tally to 50? Can we get that like tally to 50? Please, please, please run that up. Where are we? João Pedro or Kudus? It's tough. It's tough because I don't mind the idea of João Pedro. I think Kudus, even though I've got sort of my gripes about the fact he's another lefty, I do think that Kudus offers slightly more. It's tough. It's really tough. I'm going to say Kudus. Thoughts on Colin Moani links? I've not watched loads of him this season, so I'll preface it with that. What I have seen, I am not sure that I would be willing to do Jackson to Moani as much as I would be willing to do Ekatike to Jackson to Ekatike. So I'm not overly sort of with the idea of Moani. I'm not going to lose it if it happens because he still fits and he's still very Jackson-esque player profile of what we need. So it wouldn't be awful, but I just think that there's more value to be had in that area. Do you think this system will revert into a 3-2-2-1 like usual, or will we see another shape in attack? Fullback's too high in this system, and it will make it hard for them to settle in their role. In this system, I think we've seen pretty much how it would play out. But like I say, I don't think this will be a system that we see too often. I think it's just something that sort of for specific games. Like you're saying, Santos will get his chance. Will Santos get some minutes next game? I hope so, Daniel. And like Jianwei's saying here, Santos will get his chance. People need to chill. I understand people not being chill. Like I said, it is something that is worrying me in the back of my mind. But let's just hope that he does get his chance. Would you start him in the next game is a question. Yes or no, chat? Would you start Andre Santos in the next game, or would you bring him from the bench? Because obviously next game, it's a must win. Like we need a draw, but really it's a must win just in terms of confidence getting through. And then we play Bayern in the next round. We got a little bit of momentum from actually having a win. Whereas if we get a draw and it's a bit scrappy, that Bayern game is going to be even more sort of daunting, and people will care more. Whereas if we sort of smash them on Tuesday night, then we go into the Bayern game and it's closely fought, but we lose. People won't be as annoyed. Whereas if we draw this and then gets beaten by Bayern, I think the rage will. Because even just losing to Flamengo, the outrage was huge, really huge, which I did find kind of baffling. But yeah, 100%. It's a great game to showcase what he can do for Chelsea. Santos, you'd start him, yeah? I hear it. I do. Let's check the likes. Keep your questions coming in, by the way, guys, because now that we spoke over the tactics, we've got 56 people in the stream. Can we run that like tally up to 50? I'm going to refresh in 30 seconds. We're on 34 likes. Keep your questions coming in. I'll keep answering them, but let's get that to minimum 50. Gittins or Fofana, I prefer Gittins because I want his directness on that side of the pitch. I like Malik Fofana, but I think he's more of a creator, more intricate with his playing, more sort of he's tidier on the ball, but I want somebody who's a little bit more explosive and powerful on that left. So I would go Gittins for sure. But I do like Malik Fofana. I do. Big up, coolest Chelsea podcast. Let's go. Gittins or Antonio Nusa. That's closer because Antonio Nusa does have that sort of raw burst of power as well. I would still go Gittins. I'm really big on Gittins, though. I'm a lot bigger on Gittins than quite a few people were. I was tweeting it quite a bit a while ago, how big I am on Gittins, and I didn't agree. Hopefully, I can sort of turn people around to the idea of Gittins. If we sign him, I'm going to have a huge video out on the channel on Gittins. Hopefully, that will help. Wouldn't Ademola Lookman be perfect for this system? Yeah, he would. For this, he would be really good. The only thing is maybe when he is forced out wide, yes, he has that sort of burst of pace and explosiveness to go past them on the outside. Would he get bullied in terms of sort of that overall getting trapped on the touchline? I'm not too sure, but yes, he would fit. Gittins or Malik, it's Gittins for me. I don't know if you just missed that, but yeah, that's what I said. Where do you see Chelsea finishing next season? Third or fourth for me, but I think it'll be a more comfortable season, but third or fourth. No, win the game. So is that to Andre Santos? You wouldn't start him because you want to win the game. Who would be your midfield three then, Fred? Would it be the normal Casado, Enzo, Palmer back in the 10? Or would you do something different? Or what would you do? Let me know. Right, refresh. What are we on? 39. Keep it running. Keep it running. Top 3 keepers for us to sign if we don't get Magnan. By the way, been following for a while, but going to engage a lot more now. Let's go, William. Thank you for the continued support. And look forward to having you engage more often in the chat and comment in and all these bits and bobs. I do like to try and reply to as much as possible. Anyway, 3 keepers if we don't get Magnan. That's tough because so the briefing is obviously like Penders is the future. So do you want someone that bridges towards Penders or do you bring in somebody who can do a little bit of both? Now, Magnan would be my number 1 just because I think age profile, Champions League experience, he's at the age where Penders can come in a few years' time. I think it just works. If you're saying apart from Magnan, Chevalier, but he doesn't fit the age profile. But Chevalier is one of the keepers that's just right up there for me. Bulker is another one that I really like. Trafford's up there in terms of quality, but I wouldn't do it. I like him as a keeper, but I wouldn't bring him to Chelsea purely because I think that it just. I think the fans will turn on it quickly, and that worries me quite a lot with the goalkeeper position because I think it's one of those positions where I really don't want to risk the mood shifting on the goalkeeper too quickly because I think then we put ourselves in a really worrying position yet again. So I'm not sure. I think Magnan is just the outstanding answer, which makes it really hard to sort of decide on another. Because I would have kept my answer to this would have been if you're not going to get Magnan, keep Petrovic until Penders is ready. That would have been my actual answer. Won't say Chelsea position for next season until the end of the transfer window. That's fair. Would you say Estevao walks into the first team? I hope people now have respect for the Brasileiro. Can't pronounce it. Crazy Estevao was their top player at 17. Yes. I do think he comes straight into the first team. When you say walk in, I hope that he doesn't get expected to start every single game. That's my biggest worry, and that's what I don't want to happen. But in terms of being within the first team, yes, I absolutely think he does. As Cool as Chelsea says here, please do smash the like button. Really helps out. And subscribe if you haven't already. I keep forgetting to say that as well. Suzuki, yeah, he's a good one. I agree. Won't predict our final position until everyone has their preseason. That's fair. Cool as Chelsea agrees with you. Would Paez be an adequate understudy to Palmer or more of an 8? I do think he would be, but I'm really set on sending him to Strasbourg because I just think it would be so good for his development. I think he would be like a standout player if he can sort of get the minutes at the Strasbourg and play in Ligue 1 with consistency. I think in a similar way to Andre, who's just bossed it over there, I think Paez can have a similar effect. I think it'd be brilliant for his development, his confidence, his just everything about it I really like. I would play Casado and Lavia Enzo 10. Rogers also fits the plan B for sure. What's up, Melly? What's up, my guy? What is up? Let's refresh. 42. Let's get that to 50. Let's get it to 50. And then once we hit 50, we'll start pushing on from there. 75. Keep the questions coming in. We'll probably go for another 15 minutes. Like I say, this was more so to sort of touch on the tactical elements of the stream, of the game from the other day. We'll probably do another stream maybe tomorrow to go over the team, like my team to play against. Keep forgetting the name. The other team in our group. Who's staying up for Estevao watch tonight, by the way? 2 a.m. for me. Esperance. I'll be up till 2 to watch To watch Esteval tonight. Tunis, yeah. Yeah, exactly. He needs a loan. That's what I think too. Then yeah, imagine that. Honestly, call us Chelsea. Gittins, Fofana, or Kudus if you could only choose one. If I could only choose one, Gittins. Thoughts on Yildiz? I love Yildiz. He's one that, for me, he's like just behind Rodgers, but he's of that same ilk of like how much I'd like them. I prefer Yildiz to Xavi Simons in terms of a left wing option who can then become that sort of inside player. He's a bit more of a hybrid like Rodgers. So yeah, Yildiz is up there for me. Expensive, but he's up there. Thoughts on Mamadou Sarr? Seems pretty ready physically at 194. He is physically ready, and I think he's actually really good on the ball as well. I just think it's one of those ones where you don't want to rush it. I would like to see him though. Initial thoughts. By the way, if you missed it, then the video will be out later tonight with a bit of an edit on the actual tactics. So don't miss that if you want sort of an actual recap of the tactics themselves. But my initial thoughts of it were quite interesting. I think to begin with, I thought that we'd just be seeing one overlap. So we'd sort of see what I thought to begin with was we'd see this. It wasn't Santos, obviously it was Reece. And I thought we'd maybe see this, really, with the one overlap and the main dynamic being this one here. And then obviously see what you do with James as the midfielder. But yeah, be 6 p.m. for you local times. That's calm for you. For you, that's fine. Mine's 2 a.m. So you prefer Rodgers over Yildiz? Yeah, fair. Do you think football is and or should move away from? I'm assuming you've missed a bit of the question there. Could have switched up agents. So yeah, I saw that. It could be us. It could be us. Another one that I think keep an eye on is Arsenal, because I just think that Arsenal could do with somebody like him who can be back up to Saka, a bit like what they said with Madueke. He can play on the left. He can play in the 10. He gives them a bit more of a maverick, a transitional player. I think he makes so much sense for Arsenal, Kudus. So I would keep an eye on Arsenal as well. You like Rodgers physically, but I think Yildiz's ceiling is higher. I think that's fair. I think Yildiz maybe a little bit more quality in terms of that sort of extra bit of creation. So I agree. But physically for the Premier League, Rodgers sort of adds that in terms of like central carrying and sort of the way that he shrugs players off. So yeah. Do I think football is moving away from the inverted system? No, I don't. I think that there's going to be different ways of implementing. Like I said earlier, I think the idea of a tactical toolkit, and I think this is why for me, fullbacks are becoming so important, because I think certain games are suited to having an inverted fullback so that you can have a really strong 3-2 rest defense and you can sort of sustain pressure. I think some games might be suited where you can have one overlapping fullback and one sitting in here. So like a wide centre-back profile and an overlapper so that you can have sort of two really strong pocket players. In other games, like we played with the back four, like the other tactic we spoke about with the split forwards, sort of playing almost a 4-2-2-2. Again, a new iteration with split forwards that gives you something that you can go a bit more direct with. I think football's moving away from having one specific system at all times, but I do think it's one of those ones where you want to have versatility. I think that's why someone like Kukurea is so good, because he can play as the left centre back, he can play in there, he can play in the pocket, and he can play on the wing. He can play pretty much any of the four roles that you need him to play. And that's what all the elite fullbacks are sort of being able to do at the minute. Talk about what you call him, Nuno Mendes, Hakimi. They can all do the same. They can play every role on that side of the pitch, and that is key. I didn't read this one. In spite of the loss, I'm happy to see Palmer on the right. It makes us tougher unit with a double pivot and Enzo in the middle. I personally don't like Palmer on the right for quite a few reasons. I think he gets pinned out of the game far too easily. I think his impact is shunned. And I also think that he doesn't work hard enough sort of backtracking in that role. I actually think he's better backtracking centrally, even though, again, it's not perfect. Because I do think Palmer is a clever presser. I just don't think he's like an intense presser. But I hear what you mean in terms of having a tougher midfield unit, in terms of having the double pivot, like, again, say that's Lavia or someone else. I hear that. I do hear that. Funny you started talking about fullback. Was gearing up another question on this. Do you personally sell Gusto, and what do you replace him with? I wouldn't sell Gusto. I'd keep Gusto another year with Reece and Josh. Now, my big thing is with this is if Josh deserves it, he should be playing over Gusto. If Gusto continues to play poorly, he needs to gain that confidence back and earn his spot back. And I do think that's a big factor, because I think Josh needs to be fast tracked into this team, because I think he's just so good. Same with DJ Samuel Smith on the left. But I wouldn't sell Gusto unless a ridiculous offer comes in. If an offer that you can't refuse comes in based on the form that he's had from, say, Bayern, then yeah, I would sell him at a good price. But I wouldn't be actively looking to sell him, because I do like quite a few of the bits that he gives you. Like I said, I like his profile. I just think form-wise, he's very behind at the minute. Don't think we're moving good enough this window. I acknowledge it's early, but we have UCL next season. We don't acknowledge what high level it is. I do think we've been fairly slow, so yeah. Let's see what happens as soon as we get knocked out of the Club World Cup. Let's see if we move really quick then. But I am a bit disappointed it was only Delap for the Club World Cup. If we'd have got Delap and Gittins or Delap and Magnan, then I think everybody would be a little bit calmer on the window. But yeah, I hear it. You're from the US and you finally saw Chelsea live. Football is incredible, man. Everything is so precise and fast paced, like no room for error. I'm glad you got to see your first Chelsea game live. That's big. Unfortunate that it was a loss, because I'm assuming you do mean the Flamengo game. But it's good that you got to watch it. So good for you, man. But it is very fast paced. Very fast paced. Pardon me. Speaking of ISS, what do you think of our backline and depth will look like? Some of the defender links are confusing. I think Gerald Hato is one to keep an eye on. I keep sort of saying that. I think he makes a lot of sense in terms of what I just said. Can sort of play a variety of different roles on the left. He has that carrying ability. Very good on the ball, young, and aggressive defender. So I think he's the one to keep an eye on. See, that's the question, Mitchell. I think you can do both. I think you can. There's a world where Hato and ISS can be that together, because eventually Kukurea, like, he's not old, but he's older in terms of like age profiling for roles. But it doesn't look like ISS is going to be trusted straight away. So maybe the move is loan ISS somewhere where he gets very good minutes, because he deserves it. He's good enough. He is good enough to get them. Loan him somewhere to get good minutes. Kukurea first choice. Hato comes in the door as the immediate backup. And then you can start to have the battle of ISS and Hato further down the line. Do you think football is moving away from the inverted system? No, I don't. I did speak about that just a second ago. So rewind if you missed that. But no, I don't. Like I said, I think you need to have a little bit more to your bow. I don't think it can be your only thing, but it's definitely a huge... I still think it's really effective, especially in a lot of game states. We read that one. The 4, I know it's early, but look at Liverpool base. Yeah, and City. Both of them move very quick, Melly. Central midfield 3 of Casado, Enzo, Palmer seems weak defensively compared to LFC's middle 3. Yeah, a lot of that's to do with the fact they have players like Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones. Whenever either one of them plays the further forward role, their ability to press backwards is so elite. Like, they work their socks off backwards, and I think that's why you think that. In terms of the actual pivot itself, I think we're stronger where you have a Casado. Yes, they have Gravenberg, but again, like, a lot of them are sort of more ground covering players who can sort of interchange. Yes, Gravenberg, again, he sat in deeper this season, but they don't have like a natural DM. We've got Lavia as well, and Asugo, and Andre. But I think the point that you're making is true in terms of, like I say, the backwards pressing from Liverpool's midfielders. Do you think Cole will stay as a central centre-back, or someone like Branthwaite push Levi to left centre-back in a back 3? I think Branthwaite, specifically Branthwaite, would actually be the opposite. I think if he joined, it would allow Colwell to always be the central centre-back, because if you want to invert on the left, then you play Branthwaite as the left centre-back, Colwell as the right centre-back in terms of off the ball. And if you want to invert the right back, then you just swap them over, because Branthwaite can play both sides because he's so both-footed. So I think that's why a defender that is both-footed but also suits being next to Colwell, if you can tick both of those off, which Branthwaite does, I think it makes a lot of sense to give you the tactical versatility that we're talking about. If a Champon bulks up a bit, he'll be very vital for Maresca's system this season. Also, do you see Santos doing the Enzo role? Yeah, I think he will. I think Santos will do a mixture of Enzo and Casado's role. And I agree with Champon as well, for sure. Against Tunis, the probability of Maresca resting Casado for round 16, percentage-wise, no idea. I'd genuinely go fifth. Like, not even that, probably 30. I think there's a good chance he starts it and maybe takes him off early. But maybe 30%, but that's pure guess, obviously. 50 minutes. Let's refresh, see what likes we're at. We're going to get ready to end the stream in a minute because I do need to quickly get some more work done. I've only got a few more hours to get some work done. We're on 44 likes. Can we get that to 50 before the stream ends? And we'll answer the last few questions before we end in 5 minutes. Last few. Get them in. I'll also just quickly check we haven't missed any news whilst we've been on stream. Any Chelsea news? Any Chelsea news? I'm sure somebody would have said in the chat if something had happened, but worth checking whilst we're streaming. I think the main thing that's come out today is the Kudus agent change. That's the main one. That's the main one. Any last questions? We've got 53 people still in the house. We've got 46 likes. 4 more likes. 4 more likes, please. And then we're going to end the stream at 50 likes on the dot with whoever's last question comes in the chat first. We'll answer the last question, check the like count, and then we'll end the stream. And we will be uploading the tactics video later on tonight. The cause of Flamengo loss in one word. Mine's fatigue. Fatigue's up there for me, but if I was to say one word, I would say tempo or intensity, one of the two. Team for tonight. I'm assuming you mean technically Tuesday night, because we don't play tonight. But I'm going to leave that for another stream because I'm going to stream tomorrow about that. So make sure you don't miss that stream because we will go over the team tomorrow night. That's why you wanted Huijsen so badly. Very bow-footed. Exactly, Fred. Like I just said with Branthwaite, he can play both sides and it can allow Cole to play as the central. But also with Huijsen, he's so good as the central centre-back as well. So you could do that with both of them. So it would make a lot of sense. It would have been Huijsen and Cole would have been very fun. Physically, you would have they would have needed to sort of mature together. I think both can win duels well, and both are quite aggressive when they want to be, but can sometimes be bullied slightly with sort of contact of forwards. So they would have needed to mature in that sense, but it would have been a lot of fun, especially on the ball. Okay, we're going to end it there. We're on 47 likes. If when you're clicking off the stream, you could quickly drop a like on the way out to hit 50, that would be brilliant. Don't miss the tactics video, which will be out later today, as I said, and also a stream tomorrow to go over the team that we will play against Tunis. Don't miss it. Subscribe if you haven't already. All that good stuff. Thanks for joining. Thanks for the support, and I'll see you guys next time.